What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So, I find it very ironic that the three English teams that got knocked out of the Champions League are the three teams still left in the FA Cup, while the two teams that got knocked out of the FA Cup are the two English teams still left in the Champions League. Is that coincidence or not? I, I don't know. But whatever the case, we're through. We managed to beat Leicester at Leicester's place in extra time. And, while it's a good win, it's a good result, the performance was still lacking. And honestly, it really has been for the past several games. I'd say the first leg against Barcelona was probably the last good game that we had. Ever since then, you look at the Man U game, good first half, terrible second half. Man City was just a joke. And then you face Barcelona again, second leg, eh. You had Palace at home, eh. And now you've got Leicester here away. And it wasn't. The thing is, I look back at last season, and last season was just so exciting. Every game you watched, it was just this intense pace. It's so free flowing. They're moving the ball. They're attacking well. They're defending well. It was like they knew what the coach wanted, and they knew what their jobs were. This season has just been very lackluster, and the personnel, I feel like some of them need to be just sort of moved on, because there are a couple that just really haven't been showing enough recently. So first of all, let's talk about the lineup. In my opinion, the biggest mistake was not making enough changes, and I don't normally say that because you look at the lineup that he put in against Barcelona, it's a good lineup. But then you look at the lineup he puts in here, and the two changes he makes are two players that, in my opinion, don't really deserve to be playing. Not to sound harsh or anything, but they haven't done anything that's made me think, oh yes, I want them on my team. They've been terrible this season. Well, recently this season. First half of the season was a different story. First half, when things were going well, it wasn't great, but it was good enough. Murata, Bakayoko, they were good enough then. They were doing enough to sort of earn their spot in the team. And then something happened. I don't know quite when it was, but one of the games, I think it started at the Arsenal game, the one where Murata missed a bunch of chances. I think the confidence started to go there, and then the second one, Bakayoko caused some goals, and his confidence dropped, and the two of them just have not been the same since. They've been really terrible. So you switch in those two for Fabregas and Giroud, who, in my opinion, they weren't great, but both of them were solid midweek against Barcelona, and then you don't make any other changes except for your keeper. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit slower. It's going to be a little bit languid because they're going to be tired. They honestly, I think most of these players also played against Palace last weekend, so they're playing several games in a row, and it did affect a couple of them. So we'll talk about the individuals first. Caballero, he was okay. No big mistakes. The goal probably could have done a bit better on. The one shot was a bit slow, and he kind of like parried it into himself and then back into the danger zone for Vardy to finish. But it wasn't anything that I'm just like, oh, seriously? It wasn't like, getting megged at your near post. So no real problem from him, and honestly, he did have to make a couple of pretty good saves overall, so he was kind of average, nothing really special, but nothing that made me go, I can't believe he played at all. In defense, all three of the defenders played okay. Espilicueta, Christensen, Rudiger. I will say that it feels like Christensen started to drop off a little bit as far as, I don't know, I feel like maybe he's losing a bit of confidence, or maybe he's getting a bit nervous because of all of his great performances in the first half of the season. I think a lot of people have started putting a bunch of pressure on him, oh, he's the next John Terry, oh, he's the next player to take over and become captain, and he's going to lead the team. That's a lot of pressure, and I think he made that one big mistake against Barcelona that gave them the away goal, and that put a lot of pressure on us going into the second leg. I think that pressure is starting to build on him, and it's starting to become every little mistake he makes, every little bad pass, every little giveaway. I think it really is starting to weigh on him. Because he does look like a bit like a player under pressure. He's still not, there's nothing bad about it. It's just he doesn't look the same confident player that I remember at the beginning of the season when we started. So that is something a bit concerning going forward. I hope he can get that confidence back because he was dominating in the first half of the season. He wins the ball, makes a good pass, keeps possession for us. It was fantastic to watch. So I hope we get that Christensen back as we approach the end of the year and need to start putting some wins together to get into the Champions League next year. Rudiger and Azpilicueta, both of them were solid enough. Rudiger, didn't really see much from him. Azpilicueta, once again, solid in the back. So, they both did their jobs well enough. And overall, they did do their jobs well enough. It's just, it feels like coming out of the back, we're not really... I don't really know what the word for it is. It's like normally in the first half of the season, it started from defense. They'd move the ball around, they keep it moving, and eventually they'd find a pass in midfield and they keep it moving out wide and all that stuff. It felt like the passing was a lot quicker. Now, even in defense, it feels like the passing is slower. And so that's the one problem that I do have with them. Defensively, they're doing fine. But yeah, the passes going forward haven't been as good recently. And I don't really know why. Maybe it's the lack of movement up top, possibly. But that is something that I've noticed, is that I don't really see them getting as involved in the attack anymore. In the midfield, Conte and Bakayoko. Conte, as usual, just doing his job very effectively, very just all over the field, putting tackles in, making good passes, running around like he just has no... there's no care in the world for him. He just loves to run. And I love watching him play. He's so good that he is, honestly, if we're ever having a bad game, he's the reason why we can stay in the game, because of his energy in the midfield. Bakayoko only got to play half because he got a stupid yellow second half, or at the end of the first half. So he got taken out for Fabregas. But honestly, before that, I didn't see much from him. And, it's one of those things where you haven't really been playing well. Why not work hard to make sure you do start playing well? But honestly, it just feels kind of lazy sometimes. It feels like he's not willing to put a challenge in, or the passing seems slower. His touch seems like he's not really focused. So I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what happened. He was one of those players from Monaco last year that's like, oh, young player, very talented, a lot of good... And then he comes here and it's just like, all that talent is gone. So I don't know what happened. Hopefully he can refine himself by next year, because frankly, I don't want to be that club that's just like, oh, bring in the young talent and he's gone. Which we already kind of do anyway. But we did spend some good money on him, and I do want to see him flourish as a player. But right now, he doesn't really show what we bought him for. He's not showing those qualities that we wanted to bring in. So, very frustrating. Wingbacks, I think we need some new personnel there. Because frankly, it's just not good enough on the wings right now. And don't get me wrong, the defensive side of their job is okay. Alonso is letting in way too many crosses from his side, and that is a huge problem that he needs to fix. But as far as like the one-on-one situations, if a player ever picks up the ball, I do expect him to get back. I do expect him to track back and help out defensively. That being said, both of them, all the three that play right now, because Emerson for some reason still can't get into the team, so it's one of those things where I can't really judge him because I never get to see him play. But you look at Alonso, his crosses, his passes up top, they haven't been good enough. His positioning, he keeps getting inside instead of providing the width for us. That's not good enough. Moses, his production in the final third is just not good enough. Zappacosta, production in the final third and doesn't defend at all. Not good enough. So all three of the ones that continue to play, none of them really bring anything to the table that make me think, yes, I want them in my team. Honestly, right now, anytime I see any of them, I'm just like, eh. If honestly, the only one out of the three that I just don't want to see in the team is Zappacosta, because he doesn't help out defensively, and the other two do. So I don't understand why we didn't get our jobs done there. Why didn't we go and find a wingback that could take that position, or see if a young player can step into that role? But frankly, you've got Alonso, who's playing left side every single game, and he's gotten predictable. It's just the same old, he gets out wide, he tries to cross it in, it gets blocked, and then he cuts inside because he wants to be in the box, as Hazard has to come outside now, and now Hazard's your wing, and now you've isolated your best player again, now out on the wing this time. So, you look at it, he's not really providing much. Moses has become so predictable that defenders practically just know what he's going to do now. So, yeah, nobody's really bringing anything to the table anymore, and that's a problem. So I think there does need to be a little bit of a either an adjust to the tactics so that we don't have wingbacks anymore, which I know that's not Conte's tactics, but you have to do something to change it up. And in my opinion, a change of personnel might do it. So, yeah, that being said, you look at the front three. Willian started off pretty well, but then he took a knock, and I think that on top of the fact that he played a lot over these past couple games before this, I do think he was probably a little bit tired and out of it. So I completely understand why he wasn't looking up to his best second half. Hazard still doesn't look the same. Ever since the Man City match, he's just been down here, and he hasn't really picked his game up since then. So frustrated with him, and then Murata, aside from the goal, didn't really provide much else of anything. The one good run he made, he happened to stay onside just barely, and then managed to slot it away. Aside from that, he doesn't provide us anything. There's no outlet whenever we do get the ball up to him. He's not strong enough to hold it up. He gets knocked off of it too easily. They win the ball back. Whenever we're trying to play to his feet, he's making runs away from the players. It's like he's not connected with the rest of the team. So I'm frustrated with Murata right now because he's not bringing anything to the table, and we loaned out a guy who's now scored, 7 goals now in 6 games or something like that. I know it's the Bundesliga, and there's not a whole lot of teams aside from like Bayern, Dortmund, and then maybe Red Bull Leipzig, but still, he's scoring. He's doing something over there. And all I can think is, we never really gave him a chance, so how do we know he wouldn't be scoring if he was over here? But thankfully, Giroud has been playing well, so I do think in a normal game he'd probably be getting playing time, but since he played midweek, that's why we saw Murata today. So then you look at the subs, and in my opinion, aside from Fabregas coming on second half, Conte didn't do anything to change the game. He brought on Fabregas because 1, Bakayoko wasn't playing well, 2, Bakayoko was on a yellow card, and 3, we needed a bit more, control in the midfield. But with that being said, the front 3 stopped working, so we didn't have control because we could never get the ball up to him. So at that point, you'd think, hey, let's bring on Pedro, or hey, let's bring on Giroud. Have Pedro and his work rate up there. Maybe he could do something. Maybe he could help us out, put pressure on their defense so that way they can't play as easily back there. You bring Giroud on. Now you got a target man up top that you can find, something. No changes. They get an equalizer. They're dominating the second half. They look like they might score a winner. No changes. Finally get into extra time. Oh, okay. Now let's bring on a change. What was his first one? I don't even remember now because I stopped caring. I want to say his first one was Pedro. Yeah, Pedro came on for Willian. Makes sense. Willian was looking dogged. Pedro comes on with his energy and scores a goal. And all I'm thinking is, you could have saved yourself 30 minutes if you just brought him on before. He could have done this before we got to extra time. Nah, we're going to wait. We're going to take an extra 30 minutes because some of these players, they need to be tired. They need to be worn out by the end of the game. We're looking for a winning goal. We're down 1-1. We're looking for that winning goal. I know. Let's bring on Cahill for Christensen. Because a defender is going to help you score a goal. Cahill actually might, but still, it's like, where's Giroud? We scored a second goal. Oh, you were just about to bring Giroud on? Oh, darn. Well, might as well bring him on. I don't understand why Conte can't see these things. Why this guy who's supposedly the master tactician, he's supposed to be really smart and understand all of this stuff. It feels like he just doesn't care anymore. It feels like he's apathetic. We've got to get a goal. We've got to win this game in regulation, because we don't want 30 extra minutes. Yes, I realize we have international break, but who wants to go 30 extra minutes? Nobody. Doesn't matter whether you have a break next week or not. Some of these guys don't. So why not try to win at regulation? But now we're going to wait for extra time to come on, and then we're going to make our substitutions. Then we're going to bring on our changes. Even though the other team looks like they might get a winning goal late on, we're going to wait to make our changes. That way, if we do end up giving a late goal and we do end up losing the game, I just look more like an idiot. So with all that being said, that's all my frustration with it. Talking about the subs that came on, Pedro came on, obviously did well. It's getting to a point where Hazard hasn't done anything in the past few matches. Willian's been on fire, and then Pedro comes on and does pretty well. It's starting to feel like Pedro and Willian are your best 2 options right now until Hazard can get his head back in the game, because this Hazard, the one that isn't confident, doesn't feel like doing anything, he doesn't bring anything to the match. So until he can find his head again, might have to go with Pedro and Willian. And then Giroud came on, and he didn't really have a whole lot of time to do anything, but he just had a few good moments here and there. At this point, I was not really able to watch the game because I was outside and the glare from the sun was so bad it was hard to tell who was who. But it did feel like Giroud was on the end of a couple plays that came close. At least I think so. But whatever the case, we did win. We did manage to make it through the semifinals. But the thing is, we've got Southampton next, which is great because they're an easy team. We should be able to handle them well enough. But then you look at the final. We've either got Man U or Tottenham. Either of those are going to be difficult. You look at the league. We are, I think, 4 or 5 points off of fourth place for Champions League football. I mean, that's going to be difficult to make up because most of the teams ahead of us, they can't be stopped right now in the league. Meanwhile, we're struggling to beat teams like Crystal Palace at home. And, yes, we're getting wins, but it's not convincing. It doesn't look like we're confident enough to make it through the end of this season. And so whether there needs to be a change of personnel, either at the coaching level or at the player level, something needs to be done or else we're going to miss out on Champions League football again next year. Yes, we'll probably end up in Europa League because we're well enough off of Arsenal right now, but it's still kind of like, why would we want to not go for Champions League? Is Conte, has he lost the ability to motivate the players to go do their job? Because that's what it feels like at times. It feels like nobody cares, on the field, on the coaching. I don't really see him as animated. Yes, obviously he still yells from time to time, but it doesn't feel like it's the same from him this year as it was last year. So, good for the win, good for the result. Glad we made it through the semifinals, but it's still got to get better. It's still got to improve. We've got to finish out the season strong. We've got 7 games left, I think, 8 or 7. We've got to finish strong. We've got to make it to the Champions League because if we don't, that is a failed season for me. FA Cup, win or lose, that for me is kind of a makeup trophy. It's like, okay, well, we didn't really do well in any other competitions, so FA Cup, that's our makeup trophy. That's the trophy that says, okay, we did something this year. But in my opinion, none of that matters. If you win or lose the FA Cup, that doesn't matter if you don't make Champions League. If you don't make Champions League, for me, that's a failed season. Because we were comfortably in a Champions League spot. You dropped. 4 losses in 5 matches, not good enough. We've got to improve our performances in the league. Or else Conte could well be out the door by the end of this season. And not by his own choosing. So, that's all for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts in this game? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. I'll see you guys in the next game. Peace out.